Can you see it recording on your end, Dr. Stone?
I can.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to, Kathy, if you would mute yourself because it will cause a noise if the students have not muted themselves. Okay, thank you. Dr. Lamb said he would join us in a little bit. So, it's about that time. Well, it's 7 o'clock. We're going to go ahead and get started, Dr. Stone. I'm sure others will continue to join in with us this afternoon, but welcome to our Tuesday evening 601 add-on licensure weekly Zoom class. I hope all of you are literally weathering the storm. I know we're all over the place in North Carolina, South Carolina. Many of our students are along the East Coast, and Dr. Lamb will come on board just a little bit. He is? Okay. Dr. Lamb, would you like to just go ahead and say anything, because I know their minds are on the storm, so that we can get that over with and then move on with our class tonight?
You're muted, Dr. Lamb.
All right, here I am.
Okay.
Dr. Stedman probably don't want me to tell you this, but we build 2 weeks in. So don't worry about if you get behind. Take care of your family first. Make sure that everybody is safe. If your school is out, we're okay. Two falls ago, we had the big flood in eastern North Carolina. We got all those people through on time. So if you'll notice our schedule, we have 9 tasks to do this semester, and we've got 16 weeks. We've got a couple of weeks built in for breaks. We do that specifically because of the weather issues that we have in the fall. We don't build in as much time in the spring, but we do in the fall. So you'll be fine. Take care of your family. Be safe. If you're without internet or without power, it'll be okay. You know, we record all these sessions. We'll certainly give you time to catch up. It will not be a problem. So do not take any extraordinary measures to get our work done. Take care of, be safe. Take care of your job and your family first. We'll be okay. We've got time to catch up.
Okay, but I knew that would be on their minds, Dr. Lamb, so I wanted to go ahead and share that with them. Let's go ahead and get started very quickly looking at, let me see, I got it down here. Let's look at week 2. And again, in your Blackboard shell, remember, you can always know exactly what we're going to be covering for that week. Remember, if it's in red, that means that that's dealing with the APSL, and that means that that's something that you've got to do. The homework section is always to the right. Your readings are in the center, and then this is information to your left. Dr. Lamb had several or more than one person to say that they were confused about the Zoom sessions. But if you were with us at the beginning, remember, and it's in your Blackboard as well, we have, for the first 4 weeks, we have Zoom sessions on Tuesday night, and then we have Zoom sessions on Thursday night at 7 o'clock. That will stop after 4 weeks on Thursday night, and then we will reconvene later on in the semester as we move towards the APTEL. But that is so that we can make sure that you fully understand the requirements that you know for the evidences that you're having to do. And Thursday night actually is considered your coaching time. We look at that differently, and we cover some things differently. Dr. Lamb actually will be going into some task stream stuff later on. So just know that right now is to your advantage, if you can, to join in on Tuesday night and Thursday night. And on Thursday night, you're going to hear some repetitive things from Tuesday night, but that's important as well. But join in as you can. So right now, it's Tuesday night and Thursday nights as scheduled. We're actually going to go ahead and begin with Dr. Stone. He has a topic that he would like to share with us this evening, and he's going to show you how it aligns with the work that you are actually doing with the APSO. So, Dr. Stone, I think that we're going to go ahead and I'm going to turn it over to you. I'm going to stop share so that you can have control of things and go ahead and get started with your topic.
All right. Well, as Dr. Stedman and Dr. Lamb both have said, one of the things that I like to, at least each week, try to bring to the table, if I can find. All right. Hang on a minute. Dr. Lamb, I know I should have had this down at the bottom of my presentation, and I thought I did. What I'd like to talk about, as you are developing your PLCs, and I know last week we had a lot of questions about PLCs, and we had a lot of questions about how they operate, what happens in the boundaries of PLCs. So as you continue to utilize those in your project, in your evidences, I want to make sure that there's some kind of points to what, that's not what I want. All right. So improving decision-making for your PLCs. As you develop your PLCs, some interesting components. Last week we talked about some of the components of a great PLC, some of the components of a not so great PLC, and I don't have to tell you that a lot of you have already gone through and have had experiences with not so great PLCs, so you know exactly what I'm talking about. So as you begin to develop yours, and they began to be a part of making recommendations or decisions to make recommendations to your principal, I want to make sure that we have a little bit of guidance about that. So improving decisions making for your PLCs as you begin to continue that process of developing your own PLC with the guidance from your administrators. Of course, why does decision making matter? And this will be a brief little PowerPoint, but decisions are made all the time, hundreds of decisions every day, but every decision that you make has a pro and a con, a cost and a benefit. And so certainly by giving some understanding of how to make great decisions and how to analyze the data that goes into making those decisions, you're going to find that they get better. You're also going to find a little bit more support, but your decisions do matter. And as you're in your PLC, when you start making recommendations to the administration for improvements to the cultural climate of your school, of course, the decisions will matter. So how does the PLC make decisions? So once you have, the PLC, of course, is a body that's going to be weighing the evidence and beginning to look at the data to make those recommendations or alternatives that can be best for your particular school based on the data that you've collected. And so as you become a principal or an assistant principal and you start looking at data, you will understand the power of data as far as using it as a tool for improvement. So the PLC, as you start making those recommendations and start looking at making decisions, you're going to have alternative activities or alternative suggestions that come forth from members on your PLC. But the focus, as we remember from talking about the PLC last week, is always on the L, always making sure that it is focused on the learning that's going on in your school. That team, the PLC, can provide frequent, using formative assessments as well as some summative assessments. The team helps to make those appropriate responses when students are not learning or the school is not exactly where it is right now, where it needs to be. That's the purpose of PLC making those recommendations. It also builds some clarity for what the PLC is doing. So a part of making those decisions is always having the best information up front. That's gathering all the information you need to tackle the problem that's at hand. If you go in, you can, and I've always heard this, data lies. You can use data to make a point for any and everything you want to do if you nitpick data. But what we're asking you to do through your PLC is to understand all the data and to use as many data points as you can, data dumping, I believe is what it was called last week, to make informed decisions about the situation that you want to improve. So you do that by getting all the data. You do that by talking to people through surveys. You do that through informal discussions, every opportunity that you can to gather the data. You always want more information versus less information. And that last point, to that point, is don't rely on just limited information. Try to get as much as you can, prioritize the information, make questions of what you as a PLC would like to address. But there is a word of caution here, and this was mentioned last week, and I want to reiterate it. Your PLC is a part of a team and a part of the school culture. And so it must operate within the common accepted norms of that school. One of the worst things is to have grandstanding. Make sure that your administrators are on board. And I think Dr. Lamb and Dr. Stebbin have hit home on this a lot. You need to make sure the administrators are on board before you start. Make sure because that will help answer a lot of questions about what you're doing, a lot of questions about why you are doing it. Because it's tough being a principal and an assistant principal. And the last thing I would want if I were the principal of a school is one of my teachers going about doing something and surveying staff members and forming PLCs, and I not know a thing in the world about it. So realize that sometimes you need to make sure, or you need to make sure that you have transparency, that you make sure that it is clear that you're only making recommendations and that your goal is the student achievement. You don't want to make it appear as if this is a coup. You don't want to make it appear as if you just gathered a clique of your little friends who are going to say, yes, this is what we want to do. So word of caution about PLCs from a principal's perspective, make sure you're transparent, make sure they're on board, and make sure your team is effectively looking at student achievement. And as you are in your PLCs and you are making your recommendations, make sure they're not emotionally charged. PLCs aren't always the most comfortable places to be in, and that's perfect because you don't want to just sit around the table and everybody nod their head with you. You want that forceful discussion. You want those difference of opinions to come to the table. You want those passions to come to the table. That makes an effective PLC. But don't get too emotionally charged where you have the blinders on and you can only see one way, my way, or no way. Always be able to step back, always be able to take the emotion out of decisions. Remember, you're there for the learning. You're there to make sure that your children are being successful. Give yourself time, give yourself the PLC time to weigh and make a thoughtful decisions or recommendations as they approach this. Always remember sometimes it's wise to step back to give a decision that may have some ramifications. Step back, study it a little bit more, think about it more. But at some point you need to make that recommendation. At some point you're going to have to step forward. Look at the situation both in the short term and the long term. Your PLC is functioning now, but you will also use PLCs in sections 603 and 605. Those PLCs are going to be looking at different aspects of your school. But realize that when you are on that PLC, it's not just the short-term data and the short-term perspective. You're also trying to make long-term. You're trying to make sure your school is moving in the direction it needs to go in the long run. And also make sure you have consider all the pros and cons, all the risks of failing to be long-term. Short-term goals, the low-hanging fruit's easy. Long-term goals are the ones that become culture, become a part of the culture, become a custom of that particular school. And that's what you want. You want long-term effects. You want to weigh the cost and the benefits of each situation. I've got some tools here, that you can use: the SWOT, the PEASL, the PROMO. These are all tools that are effective ways to which to gather information. And I know the SWOT is listed on 601, if not the other two. There should be some links to them. I'll make sure that I include that and put it into our shells. But look at the pros and cons. Look at the costs and the benefits of each situation. And again, when that PLC is meeting, if you are recommending that you add 5 new staff members to help with literacy because the ELA is your weakest point, that's not even feasible if your school is like most schools. So make sure your decision, you weigh the pros and cons, make sure they're comfortable, and the big decisions, make sure you use some tools to try to help reach that. Because again, you're trying to use data to drive decisions to improve the learning at your school. Focus on the high priorities, some of the things that are most important. So go ahead and rank some of those priorities, rank some of those things. You can't fix the whole school through your PLC. You can't make 10 or 15 recommendations. Just hit the ones that you know you can do, hit the ones that you really want to put a lot of focus and energy into it. Make those your high priorities. Make those the things that you want to spend your time and energy in the PLCs talking about. Make sure they're doable. Consider the alternatives. If your recommendations aren't really doable, then look at some other alternatives that can be added to those recommendations to maybe something else that you could try. Because I'm sure your principal is going to be the most agreeable person in the world when you come with recommendations and you make suggestions for improving the school improvement plan, or your team will be. But also realize that have a backup plan. Have an example of something else that you can do, an alternative. Because you may end up having to go toward that alternative, or you may be pushed toward that alternative. Plan for the possibilities of errors or problems. Always plan ahead. Better to have that decision made than making that recommendation to your principal and they have 5 or 6 problems with it or issues with the PLC's recommendations. So go ahead with some good planning of problems and have solutions for them when you go in. A principal will certainly respect the PLC and respect you as a member of that team if you come in and if the problem arises, you have a solution to that. Principals really like it when you come with solutions. Was someone adding something, Dale? Danny?
No, I just wanted to say that I actually received a message from one of our candidates today, and her principal wanted her to go ahead and she wanted her PLC to be focused on nothing but dealing with teacher efficacy and building teacher empowerment and those kinds of things. So what I did, I responded back and told them, that that's coming. And, that with the 6 evidences that, we would be dealing with the PLC would be a combination of a lot of things, but we had to begin with student achievement. So the thing that you just said was that the candidates need to understand, look ahead, and you need to understand what you've got to do in addition to what you're doing now, so that when you're explaining, the PLC to them, that they have a full understanding of it. Also, your CC1, when they visit your school, ask your CC1 to help you with explaining to your administrator, exactly what your responsibilities are too, and that will help tremendously.
Transparency, and also that helped. All right, the last thing on this is to learn to delegate tasks and to boost others on the team. Even though you are the one who's got a great part in creating this PLC, the PLC operates as equals. The people on your team need to be able to have the opportunity to be a joint recommenders. So avoid that need to be in charge. Try to spread those, delegate some of those tasks. Try to spread it around. Have others become champions for different components of the recommendations, but make sure everyone's included in that particular PLC. That makes an effective PLC when everyone owns the decision, or owns the recommendation, and everyone has a part in helping to make that recommendation come to fruition. A couple of resources quoted throughout the presentation there for you, and a couple of thanks to hopefully using the APA style, which we'll introduce you to. Make sure that you're comfortable with a little bit later on in the presentation. So just to summarize, as you are using your PLCs and the PLCs are beginning to formulate and you're getting kind of feeling a little bit more comfortable with how they operate, just make sure you've got your principal involved, you've got transparency, and then you develop your team. So it's a team approach, not just you, because I heard this earlier from another class that when you go and make your recommendations, it needs to be, even in your evidences that you'll be sending in to Gardner-Webb, it needs to be the PLC team recommends, or the PLC team. It's not Canada as much as it's now the PLC team.
Right.
All right. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Before we go any further, to amplify Dr. Stone's presentation, I'm looking to see who we've got here. I want to thank the folks that I visited with today. I visited with Priscilla and Michael this morning, and Becky and Ashley this afternoon. And to amplify Dr. Stone's point, I was at a K2 school. I think Becky was here a few minutes ago. I don't know if I can see her. But anyway, I was at a primary school this afternoon. And you're right, there is a problem with, I've been following the chat back and forth. There is some problems in K2 schools with data across both states, not just one. So Becky, she just put in their K3 school. And so we're having problems with K2 data. And so we sat today and talked about some particular, or some things that could work on in the PLC. And then the principal came in when I met with Ashley later on and confirmed that the principal already has an idea of what their most pressing need is. And their PLC is going to be formed in that area because they communicate. It's not going to be a surprise or a secret. Involve the administrative team in this. This is not a gotcha. I mean, we have had some people who did data dives so they could point and say, look, we told you the administration didn't know what they were doing. That's not the perspective here. you want your PLC to support their school efforts or school improvement plan. And so, although we may not have exactly the most reliable data from K2 in the school that I was at today, they've still got a good idea what they need to fix and what their most pressing need is, and their principal is actually behind them 1,000% because that's what he wants to do. And we'll be able to, or they'll be able to form their PLC and work together, and they'll be very successful because they have involved their principal along the way.
Right, and with the data, Dr. Lamb, you have to work with what you've got. You can't work with what you don't have.
You can't worry about what you don't have, folks. You know, I mean, schools. I mean, this is real life. I mean, principals right now are melting down all over both states because they don't have data. So, you know, you can't worry about what you don't have. You know, if you did that, you can never get out of the house in the morning. You got to saddle up and ride sometimes, folks. You just have to go with what you got. Do the best you can. And that's the way the school business is. But if you're doing good things for kids, it'll come out. You'll be rewarded if you're doing the right thing for kids. And so involve the people at the school. Make this a collaborative project. Don't make this something that it's your grad school project. Nobody wants to be a part of that. They went to school. They expect you to go too. But you're adding value. That's the whole notion here, is you're adding value. And if you can show that value, people will want to be a part of that. People like winners. They abhor losers.
That's right.
It's the way life works.
Dr. Lamb, while I'm talking to them for just a few minutes, just a review on task 1, will you pull up in the Blackboard shell what it takes to have an accomplished piece of work?
Okay.
Over there, and I'll talk with them. I sent you an Absol Helpful Hints this week, and basically it breaks it down in as simple language as you can possibly make it. So with the template that you have, with everything that's in your handbook, your scale handbook, and with this Absol Helpful Hints and all the resource materials that we have provided you, there is absolutely no reason why you should not be very successful with completing this work. Now, at this point, I'm just going to remind you, at this point, the perfect scenario would be that you would, by this Sunday, you would have completed your school profile. Remember, that's where you're telling the story about your school, and everybody's story is going to be different. Then you're going to begin with task 1 and your PLC research. And that is, you're just talking about what is a PLC? What does a PLC look like? You know, what does the research say? And remember, you have to have a minimum of 3 references. One of those 3 references must be where you have cited Richard DeFore. And it must be completed or done, written APA style, and Dr. Stone's going to talk about that in just a few minutes. You can have more than 3 references, and I would think that once you got in there, that might be very possible that you would have more than 3 references. But again, what does the research say about what is a PLC? And we've given you just about everything you need in the documents that you have. You really don't have to look much further than that, but you can, and Dr. Lamb showed you where you could go find it in the library in Blackboard as well. Then the next thing that you do is, you should have already done this. If you haven't done it, you need to really get started on this, is your PLC selection. Decide who's going to be on your team. Why do you want them on your team? What expertise do they bring to the table, and how are they going to help you accomplish your goals? That's what you do with that section. And then you're going to actually have a meeting, and in that meeting, you're going to basically establish the norms for your PLC for the semester. You know, what is your meeting going to look like? When you're going to hold it? You know, who's going to do what? How is it going to be handled? When is it going to be? Just those basic things that will happen at your meeting. You should have already spoken with your principal and asked about being able to conduct the PLC. You need to put that in writing as well, and that becomes an artifact. You need an affirmative response back from your principal. That becomes an artifact. Remember, after your PLC meeting section, there will be a reference section, and that is where APA style, anything that you have referenced in your research or in any of the other work, you have to include that APA style. And then lastly, your appendices, and your appendices should include, at a minimum, those artifacts that I just talked about, where you have requested to do the PLC, the affirmative response back, an agenda, minutes of the meeting, and it would be nice to have at least a picture of you presenting, and that always serves as proof that you are doing what you're doing and working with your team. That's what we should be looking at when you submit work to us, those of you that can, this coming Sunday night. Dr. Lamb, when you get ready, pull that.
I'm ready.
Okay, pull that up for me. First of all, at a minimum, your work must be proficient. But now proficient, the document that we gave you, the completed APSL that we gave you, the example, remember Dr. Lamb told you last week that barely was a proficient document. It was not the best in the world, but it covered what needed to be covered. And we do not want that to be what you do. Now, you have this information in Blackboard in your course shell. This shows you what you must do. If you look at this last column over here, this shows you what you must do to have an accomplished document. And I'm just going to go over this one, and then it's there. You really need to pay attention to this as you're doing your work. And you go back, and this becomes a checklist. Have I done this? Have I done this? Have I done this? Your research on PLCs must include a minimum of 3 sources and be written in APA format. I told you that. And notice not maybe it says you got to do that and you've got to do this. The candidate documents PLC members and their roles, strengths, and other significant details. I've told you that already. Then, and you've got to do this as well. The candidate leads the PLC in a meeting to discuss the vision and purpose of the PLC. But it doesn't stop there. And what do? The candidate used basic technologies to communicate with other members of the PLC, and you've got to show that in your work where you have done that. These are all the things that you must do to be accomplished. Now, if I do all of this just in my mind, does that mean that it will be accomplished? Well, not necessarily, because it's how you write it. When you do your research, is there meat and substance in your research? Does it really mean something? So you need to make sure that when you're doing all of this, that you're putting your best foot forward, and that it is something that remember, when you send it in for a final evaluation, to task stream in the end, it doesn't come back unless there's something wrong with it. But if it comes back, then chances are you won't be accomplished then. You probably will, the most we can do is probably get you to proficiency, if that's the case. Your goal should always be that you want to be a 4 and you want it accomplished. Dr. Lamb, anything you want to say about that?
No.
Okay. Dr. Lamb, will you talk to them briefly about the peer reviews are coming up next week, so they need to get an idea about what peer reviews are.
Okay. When you post your task 1 to discussion board or to APSL task for review, that's the same place. Let me make sure that everybody understands that. This is Dr. Stedman's C4 shell, and it says APSL task for review. It takes you to discussion board, and you put your task 1 in for review. right here. You put one in. I see 3 people have posted in his shell.
Yeah, I've had a
Right.
few already. Yes, sir.
Now, if you click on discussion board, guess what? It takes you to the exact same place. We simply gave you a quick link, if you couldn't remember, discussion board that says app cell task for review. So that's where you put your work. Now, these threads are available to anyone. So when I go in, I can click on that thread and I can download any of those 3 that have been uploaded there. So here is Samantha Bond's task 1, and there it is. And I can download it, and then I can review it and post the review back on this same thread. It allows me to do that. I can upload back to this same thread. So I'll take and download that one. All right. And then I take this template and I review it. So the first thing is the task content aligned with the course content or appropriate external sources when directed to do so or when needed to support decision facts of the narrative. In other words, does the knowing influence the doing? Have they shown in this task that they have done their PLC research and that they have done their selection and run their meeting according to the rules for PLCs? That's what they're asking here. Did they actually internalize that PLC research? And if so, is it reflected in their PLC selection and their PLC meeting that they ran? Did they have norms? Did they have value?
Yeah. Dr. Lamb, would you comment there? I had to deal with a couple of students last semester that simply put in there, yes, the know it influences the doing, and that's all that they put there.
No, you need to show us an example of what they did. Now, I won't sit here and argue that your feedback is going to change the world. But part of what you're learning here is how to evaluate work based on a rubric. Because guess what you have to do every day as a principal? You have to evaluate work based on a rubric. It's called teacher evaluation. This is your earliest steps in learning how to evaluate teacher work. And so I hope that this will provide some quality feedback to the author of this task. But even if you argue, well, that's not true, it provides you the opportunity to learn to evaluate based on a rubric. And so we want to see more than, I give it a 70 because it had a good beat and it's easy to dance to. I want to see the reason why. Only the old people laughed at that one that remember American Bandstand. All the young people said, what did he say? And so
Dr. Stone's laughing.
I have heard the reference before.
And so we want more than that, than the knowing, as Dr. Stedman said, the knowing reflects the duty, or I give it 80. Good beat and easy to dance to. We want to know what they did that reflects that they actually learned something from doing their research. Then, using the language of the rubric, examine the text for areas of strength and comment. Be prepared to share these during the Zoom peer review session. Now, you know, after you do your first 2 written tasks, you're going to do a Zoom session where you actually you read your review to the actual person. Now, the good part of that is they're face to face, and that's kind of hard to do, is have critical conversations with people about their work. But the good part is they're not in the same room with you, so they can't poke you in the eye or the nose. But this is your first foray into having those critical conversations, those curriculum audits, those post observation conferences, those post walkthrough conferences where you tell people what was good or bad about what you saw them do while you were in their room. This is your first opportunity to begin to learn to do that. You know, I'm famous for just being kind of blunt. And so, you know, but I do not, unless you are a large man, you see I kind of fill up the screen, both width and height wise. Unless you do that, you might want to learn to be more diplomatic than I have been in my career. I've considered that to be a shortcoming. But you need to learn how to break not good news to people in a positive way. And that's what we're talking about here. So the peer review is more than just for the author. It's for your learning as well. And so we take these seriously. We read these. We actually read these reviews because that tells us that you're getting it. This is kind of an assessment for us as instructors and coaches to kind of see, are they getting it or not? We call it unpacking the rubric. You've heard that 1,000 times. I kind of hate that terminology, but that's exactly what it is we want to make sure that you know what you're doing, but we're also teaching you some skills in terms of giving feedback constructively, grading on a rubric or unpacking a rubric, and being able to have critical conversations with people when their work is not where it needs to be. So that's the purpose of peer review. And so I won't spend all the time going down each one of these, but you can read it and interpret each one of these. And so you will do one of these, and then once you do it, as I told you, you will go back and you will post it on that same thread. You pull this one up and you create a thread and put it back. And
Dr.
see,
Land,
you just hit reply,
yeah.
browse my computer, and you upload their review right back on that same thread. Browse my computer, and you put, it will search your computer. You put it right back on that same thread where you got it to give them their feedback. And then you submit it, hit the submit button. And then once you've done that, you come over here to where it says completed peer review Dropbox. You click on it, go to task 1, and you upload it again. Browse my computer, you upload and submit it for your grade. So you've not only provided feedback to them to help them, we get to look at it to see what you've learned by doing that, and we give you a grade on that. So it serves a dual purpose.
They do this for 2 students.
That's correct, in their Zoom
in their
team.
Zoom group.
And then after you've done 2, task 1 and task 2, you'll get together at a time convenient for you and do a Zoom, and you will read the content of the first 2 to one another and answer any questions that you have or any concerns that they have.
And we'll tell them more about that after next week.
Yeah, we'll get to that. But that is the peer review process. You do written reviews. After 2, you do a video. Then you won't do a review of the 5th task of the APSEL because that's a reflection. And then you'll do the first 2 of the APTEL, and you'll do another video review, and then you'll do the 3rd task, and then you don't have to review the 4th task of the APTEL because again it's a reflection.
Actually,
So you'll do 8 peer reviews of the first 4 tasks of the APSEL and 6 of the first 3 tasks of the APTEL. You'll do 2 video reviews, and that will be the peer review for the semester. You will fill that in with 2 case study Zoom sessions where you talk about your case studies among one another. And we'll talk to you more about that later as well. And that will be your Zoom requirements. And so I was asked a question today by Becky, I believe, said, how often do Zoom groups get together? We have some that get together every week, sometimes twice a week, because they just want to share and talk and vent and work together. I do a final reflection in the last semester, a qualitative final reflection, and I get a lot of, these people will be friends for life. We're going to get together and meet face to face. They've been so supportive. Your Zoom team can be the best thing in the world. It's up to you how much you put into it. So, you're going to have to meet probably 3 to 5 times in terms of doing your peer reviews and doing your case studies. But outside of that, you should meet as often as you need to. If nothing else, to lend one another moral support and talk bad about us.
Okay. Dr. Stone, if you would get ready for just a brief APA review. Just a reminder, one of the students contacted me this week and they said, Dr. Stebbin, the template or whatever is not completely APA formatted. Don't worry about that. Keep the template as it is. Keep everything else as it is. The work you do, where it's in yellow and you've got to do something, That is what we're concerned about with APA. That's where you would use APA with all of the work that you with your writing and with the work that you do. So don't worry about the template. Keep the template as it is. None of that changes. Don't worry about that. Only the work that you put in yourself. That's the APA that we're looking for. And Dr. Lamb, when Dr. Stone gets through, okay, he's going there. Okay, that's what I wanted to make sure. Okay. Okay, Dr. Stone, you're muted.
This is so hard to keep up with you guys. So within the course overview, in your left column here, if you go all the way down to the end of the weeks, you'll see the APA format materials. That is certainly the link that we would like for you to reference to, because everything that you do at Gardner-Webb, whether you're in the master's program, you go into our curriculum programs, or you go into our doctoral programs, Gardner-Webb is based around the APA style. Now, I believe the most current APA style now is edition 6. I think edition 7 is coming up in a couple of, I think it's within a couple of months, but so use edition 6. I would strongly encourage, if you're going to continue your education as you are in the males program or any other program, is that you go ahead and invest in an APA book. You can get them, try to get the 6th edition if you want to wait to get the 7th, but I would certainly invest in one in Amazon or through the bookstore here at Gardner-Webb, but they really are quite handy, and they're not that expensive. But in this particular tab, we have 3 sites that you can go to: Purdue, the OWL Writing Center. Just click on it. It will talk about the general format for the APA, the general guidelines, the major sections of a paper. Phenomenal opportunity there to see everything you need to know about how to do it APA style. An abstract, how to cite prep your references in the APA style. Really, it will do it for you. The other site we have here, of course, is how to do annotated bibliographies in the APA style, again, using the Purdue University's OWL Lab. There's the APA style here.
And that, Dr. Stone, that task 3, you will have to use this.
Yes, you do. And then finally, the 4th thing that we have are some really great pointers that were put together by the staff a long time ago here at Gardner-Webb. But it's some great pointers for you about what we're currently using the APA, the 6th edition. But there are some other handy references. The Male Scale Handbook is in there on page 109. I'm thinking that may be still current. This is from January. Do you know, Dr. Lamb, whether or not that changed? I know we did some changes to the Male's Handbook. Is it still page 109?
It should be.
Okay.
Yeah, because that was last semester, Dr. Stone, that we used this.
We did not. It gets revised this coming summer. It has to go one more year for revision.
Page 109 should do well. I've got those Purdue sites for you, and just some reminders about some general requirements of the APA style. I'm not going to read them to you, but again, use this as a handy reference, because we will be looking for the APA style and everything that you submit through Gardner-Webb at this point. It is, again, remind you where it is. It's over here on your course overview, way down past the weeks, down to the APA, below the video library, the APA format materials. Excellent resources for you. I would highly suggest, though, that you do go ahead and invest in that manual. All right, I'll stop sharing.
Okay. Dr. Lamb.
All right, before we go any further, let me answer a couple questions.
Okay.
You do put your references on the template right before the next task. That's the last thing, is your references. That is correct. That was a question. And then I had somebody say, we don't have to do video, we don't have to do peer review until after task 2. No, you don't have to do a video peer review until after task 2. You have to do a written review after tasks 1, 2, 3, and 4 of the app cell. You do the written one, do the process I just showed you, put it back on their thread, and then put it in the Dropbox for your grade for the first 4 written ones. You have to do 2 of your team members, so that's 8. Now, after you do task 1 and 2 written, you do the video of where you do the video and you orally present 1 and 2 to your team members. So you do have to do peer review after 1, but it's written. You don't have to do a video one until after you've done 1 and 2. And then you cover both of them in that meeting. That gives you a little bit of time to get your team squared away and get proficient using Zoom.
Dr. Lamb, go to week 3. Should go week 3 in Blackboard.
Okay, just a second.
When you can.
We've got one that she got kicked off, I did not have a chance to read it. Please share again. Again, let me go back to her. Written peer reviews, tasks 1 through 4, each one of them one each for 2 of your members. Video reviews, 1 for the AppSell, 1 for the AppTel after tasks 1 and 2 are done. So that's just to summarize. So if you look at your drop boxes, you'll see that corresponds to what I just told you. So if you go back and look at your drop boxes, let me share my screen. Let me share my screen. So if you go back and you look at your drop boxes, so if you look at task for review, you can see you're going to review tasks 1, 2, 3, and 4 for peer review. Task 5 is only for instructor review. You don't have to review it. And then 1, 2, and 3, you have to peer review, and you have to do 2. And then when you go to your Dropbox, you can see right here, 1, 2, 1 each of 2 of your team members for task 1, same for task 2, same for task 3, and we'll put task 4 in there. I see it's missing from this one.
No, that's the AppTel, Dr. Lamb.
I'm sorry, I'm in the AppTel. And then 1 for task 1 of the AppTel, and then here's the Dropbox for the AppTel. As I told you, 1 each, 2 each for each of the first 4 tasks, and then 1 video that encompasses task 1 and 2. So just look at your drop boxes and it'll tell you what you got to have. Drop boxes are the assignments where you put assignments in. Pretty simple. All right, I'm out.
Okay, go to. I was going to ask you to go to the weekly schedule, week 3. I want to show them something.
All right.
And it always pays to you're in the current week, but you need to always look a week ahead of time too. Look at week 3. This is next week. The AppSell Task 1 revisions due to instructor. Submit to AppSell assignment Dropbox. We're going to review it this week. Next week, Task 1 will go in for a final grade with Dr. Stone and me. AppSell Task 1 peer reviews will also be due week 3, the end of week 3. That's what Dr. Lamb has just talked about. So for 2 of your peers in your Zoom group, you will do 2 peer reviews on the AppSell Task 1 that you will be submitting for grade at the same time. And then by next week, you need to understand that while you're submitting Task 1 for a final evaluation, Task 2 will be submitted for a review at the same time. So from this point on, for the next few weeks, starting next week, when you submit something for evaluation, you will also be submitting something for review at the same time. And that will be the process until we complete the AppSell. And then we will turn around, have about a week, and we'll turn around. We'll do the very same thing with the AppTel the latter part of the semester. But it's important that you always look at that schedule, and you need to look a week ahead of time so that you can, in your mind, you can pace yourself and you can know, I've got this coming up. But remember, I told you, the first 2 or 3 weeks are very critical. And once you get into a routine, then it'll become second nature. You'll know what to do. But make sure you pay very, very close attention to those things the first 3 weeks. Okay. Dr. Lamb, that's all I've got for tonight. I think they've had a lot, and then we've got we've got Thursday night. We hope that you'll come back on board with us Thursday night, and we will pick up with some new some new things on Thursday night as well and it won't be long before Dr. Lamb will be going into the task stream process with them very soon.
Okay. My close for tonight is this.
Hey, can't hear you.
My close for tonight is this. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right. You'll remember I told you the first time we met, don't get in the habit of turning in partial work. Make sure everything is there. If it's all of task 1, make sure you turn in all of task 1. If task 1 has 2 prompts, turn them both in. What Dr. Stedman just explained to you is the reason why. You're always in doing final revisions of the last task while doing the draft of the next task. If you're having to go back and work on it and add more to it, you'll never stay up in this program. Yeah, it's a little aggravating for us to grade, but that's not the issue. The issue is if you don't catch your rhythm, if you have to go back and start working on that last task while you're trying to do the next task, that's like a dog chasing cars. You'll eventually catch one, and that will not be good. And so if you want to make it in this program, you got to understand, do the whole assignment, turn it in, move on to the next assignment, start that draft. When you get feedback, you go back and correct that while you're going forward on the next one. But if you're still adding things to the last one, no, not enough time to do that. Won't happen. And that's a good routine to get in for the work. We're trying to prepare you for the world of work. When your superintendent gives you work to do and you turn in part of it back to him or her, that will not go well for you. You've got to get in the habit of, this is how much time I have. This is what I can do with this much time. And that's all you can do is still say, I'm going to do a great job on half of it and turn in half of it. That's not how it works in the world of work. So to amplify Dr. Stedman's point here, there's a rhythm here. And the only way that you can catch that rhythm is when you turn something into us, it's the entire task. It's exactly what we ask you for in terms of the totality of it. It's not a partial. Can you give me some feedback to see if I'm in the right direction? No. Do it all, turn it in, and then we'll give you feedback. That will allow you to go on to the next task and get started.
And Dr. Lamb, I just want to say, I see her on there. I had a wonderful visit with Maria Capel on Friday, and if everybody's administrator is as supportive as hers was, then we will have no problems in this program this semester.
Right.
He was one of the best supporters I've ever seen in an administrator.
That's great. The 2 that I had today were wonderful.
Yes.
I know that Dr. Revis is with us tonight, and she's making visits. Dr. Stone, we're thankful every time we go out. We appreciate the time that you take with us and that your administration. I just love making visits. It's the highlight of the year for me is to get to go out. If you approach this the right way, this is a very positive experience. I've seen one here from a student that I was sick and couldn't meet with my principal, panicking about task 1. Any suggestions? Just go ahead and write it out. It'll be okay. You can meet with your principal later. Go ahead and get the content written out. We've got some flex time in this. You might be working a little bit behind, but it's okay. Those kind of things happen. That's called life. It's like the storm coming this week. That's life.
And Dr. Lamb,
you have to learn how to adapt and adjust and overcome. Just keep moving.
And I know you're supposed to be working with your team, but those that are going to be away from your school and can't be with your team, do what you can on your own and be ready to present information to your team. Don't wait till you get with them. Go ahead and be proactive and get as much done as you can. Dig on your own, and then just when you get back, you won't be so far behind. You can present to your team and move forward that way. And all the information that you need, most of it is online. You just have to start digging for it. It's out there.
It is. It is.
Okay. Dr. Lamb, that is it for me until we meet again on Thursday night.
Well, that's great. Hopefully Thursday night, I talked with Seth, our task stream person today. He's working on accounts now, and hopefully I'll be able to introduce task stream. I'm going to go over some Zoom things with you on Thursday night, and we're going to look at at the technology piece. We'll look at Zoom. We'll look at making sure that you're using Blackboard properly. We'll look at Zoom. We'll look at YouTube. And hopefully we'll get to Task Stream on Thursday night. If not, we'll get there next Thursday. But hopefully we can get there on Thursday night.
Dr.
So
Stone, anything else?
thank you for joining us. Anybody have anything?
I just want to remind people, be wary of the storm, stay safe, take all the precautions. Don't, do anything. Think of your family and think of Gardner Webb second. We'll be here. We'll be here.
We'll be here.
Right. Okay. Dr. Revis, thank you for joining. Okay. Anything else, Dr. Lamb?
All right. If you have not been contacted for a visit, I see one that says they haven't. You've not been contacted, email me now. If you've not been contacted for a visit, and I'll get those, or you can email Dr. Stone. I'll send them to Dr. Stone since he's in charge.
I sent an email to her.
Very good. I emailed one of the CC1s just a minute ago, and so let us know. Did I get your email? I don't know. I'll check though, Latoya. I will check. I've been on the road all day and just catching email by phone.
Dr. Lamb, I will say those of you that are on the East Coast and the storm maybe affect, make sure if there is a difference in your schedule and your CC1 has contacted you, that you communicate with them to let them know if something has changed with their appointments. So.
All righty. Thank you. Good
Okay.
night.
I will see everybody on Thursday.
Stay safe.
Okay.